My name is Father Bill Gabriel, and I am an Augustinian friar, currently the head of mission and ministry at Malvern Preparatory School in Malvern, Pennsylvania. And I grew up in New Hampshire, and at that point, always thought when I was a little kid maybe that there was something about the friars that would be engaging, inspiring, something that felt welcoming, that I thought, you know what, maybe there's something here that I need to pay attention to. And I put it to the back of my mind for many, many years. I went to Villanova undergrad, independent of becoming a friar, and studied theology because I wanted to make a lot of money. So much for that. And then I taught high school and then joined the Friars in 2015 and have been professed 5 years in solemn vows and 4 years a priest.
Hello, my name is Father Tony Burrascano. I've been an Augustinian friar for about 55 years. Presently, I am assigned to St. Augustine Preparatory School in Richland, New Jersey. As Father Bill, I'm the assistant to the head of school, head of mission and ministry. I've had many different assignments in my life: administration, parish, the missions in Peru and in Africa for brief times. And then I got asked to go to a high school when I was in my late 60s, and I love it. So I'm very glad that they asked me. I'm originally from New Jersey, so it's the first time I've been stationed back in my own state. The Augustinian order has a certain charism which we bring to our places of education, high school and college. And those are the values of Veritas, Unitas, and Caritas. And they are very strong guides for us. And each of our schools spends a lot of time working on that, whether it's a high school or Villanova University.
Yes, I think similarly, and I'm sure this is the same at St. Augustine's as it is at Malvern Prep, we'll theme certain retreat days after the values of truth, unity, and love. We'll have faculty and staff retreats that are infused with it. We talk about it a lot. It's plastered around the campus, so it's very visible. The students will get to see it, and but also to reflect upon it as much as possible.
Yeah, I think it's true. Our students certainly know those words because they have it everywhere. Homilies, talks, and things like that. So it is a strong part of the identity of an Augustinian school.
And I think in some ways, the first kind of entry point into that sense of what this looks like and doing things together as one, centered in your faith, would be something like the Brotherhood ceremony, which is in the incoming 9th grade, and transfer students are joined into this process. And it's a real reflection of, hey, this is who we are and what we're about, and you're joining this and you're committing to being a part of this, and those who have already been a part of it get a chance to renew their commitment to it as well.
The brotherhood aspect in Augustinian education is very strong. And when I first got there, I heard about it, and I thought it was just a marketing device. I thought it didn't work. I was asked to interview all of the incoming freshmen after 1 year, the ones who have been freshmen. 100 some. I did about 90 and I gave up. I got tired of it. But and I asked them about the brotherhood, and I was really surprised. They said that they felt it, they saw it, they experienced it. And I said, well, do you see that with upperclassmen? Do you feel they treat? And every one of them said yes. It's a respect and it's a caring for one another. It really, as everything in Augustinian school, models our Augustinian life.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. In terms of the curriculum, whether it's in theology or seminar courses, there's a great desire to weave in Augustine's life. Particularly, there's study of Augustine's kind of seminal work, the Confessions of St. Augustine, as well as his spirituality. We'll even do we have a course called the Deodatus, named after Augustine's son, which is designed for seniors to lead interior reflections on, where God is showing up in their story, in their life, modeled after what Augustine shares in his own confessions, and then to be able to share that with the younger students. So it's kind of a peer-to-peer ministry as a way to start morning prayer. So it's another kind of curriculum piece for us. How about you?
Yes, the Confessions are it is probably the most powerful work of St. Augustine. And I find it interesting, all years have some form of the Confessions. The freshmen have one, it's almost a comic thing. Sophomores, we do Son of Tears. Juniors do more, and they do the Confessions, and the seniors do the full Confession. So every year, they have a version of the Confessions of St. Augustine. So every year they're growing and building and deepening their understanding of the Confessions and of Augustine and his theology and his life.
I love that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very beneficial. I think it's very much obvious to our people. They know we are different. We are an Augustinian school. We always say we are a Catholic Augustinian school. I found, though, that a lot of the students are not Catholic, and a lot of the students who claim to be Catholic have no idea of what anything is. So they walk in the first day, and some of them had no idea it was a religious school. But when I see we have exit interviews for the seniors, and after 4 years, it's just amazing how they have come to that understanding. They know St. Augustine, they know the Augustinians, they know that we are different.
Yeah, I think that's what makes, particularly I found in high school, during these very formative years for students as they're growing up and they're learning who they are and what do friendships look like and how does brotherhood feel and look like and who can I rely on and trust, and they're figuring out all those pieces, and then who God is. I think Augustine serves, as you're saying so beautifully, like an amazing model that says, hey, this can be a wonderful antidote to your restlessness that we can all tap into no matter what faith background you're bringing. And I think that's very common for a teenager. And then even for a teenage boy, in our cases, who you think might not be as tapped into some of those things, I think it really resonates feeling very comfortable in an environment with their brothers to say, okay, I can actually go deep and come to know who God is in my life, and then pronounce my faith in a very positive, beautiful way, where maybe they wouldn't have felt comfortable in another environment.
I think you're completely right. I teach sophomores, and the course is Scripture. And the difference I see, not all, but most of the students from September to May, growing and maturing, it's just amazing. And most of them have never held a Bible before. And it is really a discovery of them, of the Bible and of Jesus and the Old Testament, how it came about. I have them do evaluations at the midpoint and at the end of the year. And I ask them, did this affect your life any? And I'm amazed that the number of them say, I'm praying now, I know God better, I want to know more. For many of them, it's their first introduction to faith and to religion and to God.
And I think this is something that's really been on my heart in the value of education, and for us as friars, meeting people in the education ministry, because we're noticing that the landscape of the church as at the moment, we may not be encountering this younger generation in the pews.
No.
They're not necessarily going, and perhaps for no fault of their own. Maybe this is something that they're familiar with, or they're not brought up in it. And so we have this privileged opportunity to encounter them in a way that they're there. Yeah. They're right in front of us. And I think meeting them there, and given the landscape of how everything is evolving, can be a great source. And I think we're finding students will actually say, wow, I never knew this, and it's really touched my life in a positive way.
One of the things where I see that happening, and I know it's also happening at Malvern, we're getting students coming who were baptized, did not receive any of the sacraments. Every year we get more and more who come and say, I want to receive First Communion, I want to receive confirmation. And we work, of course, a lot of that's parish-based, you have to work with the pastors. But both of our schools, I know, every year has some who have no baptism, and they're looking for the order of Christian initiation. So you are preparing them to have the sacrament of initiation, baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist at once. And I think what really motivates them is when they see the guys the year before be acknowledged. They've received these sacraments. They've been baptized. And it gets them thinking, which they've never thought about it before. And the environment lends to that. And they're coming to see faith in God and church as something more important than they had before.
Yes, 100%. That's so well said. And as it's happening there, it's happening with us. It's really remarkable to see. I don't know if I, as a high schooler, would have been like, hey, my parents aren't necessarily faith-filled or churchgoers, but I've encountered Christ through this Augustinian lens and community here, and it tells me I want to make this public place. So we had over 12 students, 12, 13 boys, become Catholic or finish their sacrament just this year alone.
It's wonderful.
And it just, I think, as you said, it gets more and more. People are already saying, oh, maybe that's something
makes them think. Yeah. I think I see this most in mission and ministry. The liturgical part, the number of students who we have who come and say, I want to be part of mission and ministry. I'm really shocked. I really am. I remember last year, the last day of school, I'm ready to go home. And a student comes in before he gets on the bus for the last time, and he goes, Father, I want to be in mission and ministry. I said, well, you're a little late. But, that was the last thing he did out of the school year. That really, and some of them, when they come and they ask why, I once had two of them come into my office and say, we want to be in campus ministry. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And we talked about it. We wanted to be Eucharistic ministers. And I said to them, why? And they said, well, we like the way you do Mass here compared to the parish where I go. But also we see our classmates being involved. And we don't want to just sit on the side and watch. We want to be involved. I said to them, I can retire. When that is moved within the students, it makes our life worthwhile.
Absolutely. It's a really exciting time, I think, to be in high school ministry, particularly, but education in general, because of that. I think there's a real front lines nature of what we're doing. And just by no extra effort on our part, really, we're just being ourselves.
Right. We're doing what we are called to be. Yeah. I've really been amazed at the response of students. It really is. It has just been something I didn't expect. It's been good.
I would just add to this. I remember my high school masses. It was once a month. And it was pretty like, you're looking around, is this person singing? Is this person involved? Is this, you kind of were like, you did it infrequently enough that you weren't really familiar. The participation wasn't as high as it could be, nor was it something that you terribly look forward to. Yeah. Like, all right, we had to go to Mass in the middle of the school day. That's me. And I've noticed a complete shift. And I know that St. Augustine's has Mass weekly for the whole campus, as does Malvern. Right. And the way in which these students speak about the value of that experience kind of midweek Wednesday.
Yes.
And it's like this midpoint of the week where they all come together. At Malvern, it's 6 to 12. At St. Augustine's, 8 to 12.
Right.
And it's like everyone's all in, and they do it enough that it becomes a routine, a part of their day and a part of their week, that I actually have seen an increase in participation, of energy, of excitement, of prayerfulness, to the point where they're saying like, wow, we're having shadow students who are looking at the school come on Wednesdays and say the favorite part of their shadow visit was the Mass experience. And I'm like,
that's a good idea.
What 8th grader is saying that, So I think there's something really beautiful about those moments too that we're seeing in our Catholic faith as Augustinians for these students.
I had a student come to me and say, his mother said to him, gee, you're in a Catholic school. I really should start going back to church. And the student said, well, Mom, I go every week. You should go too. So, there's a little evangelization going on there too. Yeah.
It's great.
But, the values we talked about, Unitas, Veritas, Caritas, I've heard back from students who've graduated and gone to Villanova. They said they can get that same Augustinian spirit that they had at St. Augustine's. It's an easy transition for them to come to Villanova because that is so familiar, which applies the power that it was in the high school, which maybe we didn't even realize the depth of it, but several of them have told me, you can just tell Villanova is the same as St. Augustine's. It's Augustinian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's one of those things where something that's so core, in addition to these values, is that heart on fire that you'll see in your seal, in Malvern Prep's seal, in Villanova's seal, in so many different, in the province's seal. And I think there's something really, that sense of Augustine who says, like, you pierced my heart, and it has been set on fire. Set me on fire with your love, Lord, as he prays in Book 10 of the Confessions. And it's like, I think that heart on fire is something so valuable that they find a connection to, as well as the values, because at the end of the day, we're there to walk with them, to help them discover what sets their heart on fire with the love of God and neighbor. So whatever that is, whether that's becoming an accountant, future friar after your own heart, and many other variations that they could be, that hopefully they've tapped into that burning heart in a way that's going to make a big impact on the world. And I think they find that when they come to Villanova too.
I think the friars really have an impact. We don't have many of them at each school, but we do. One of the things I came to realize is, outside of the classroom, the friars, if there is something going on, a parent meeting, if one of the friars is not there, they'll say, well, where's Father so-and-so or so-and-so? Sporting events. They would love to have faculty there. They expect the friars to be there. And if they're not, it's, where is so-and-so? I found that interesting, that the demands placed on us are not placed on others. The expectations, the hopes. They love, they'll say to me, I cheat. I ride a bicycle after school around to all the fields with the yellow helmet, and they see me, and they wave and say, oh, Father Ten. I said, good. And then they'll say to me the next day in class, oh, we saw you watching us for practice. That's a good way to do it. But they really have expectations of us. They expect us to be different than anyone else at the school. It's a challenge to us.
It really is. And I think it's a beautiful challenge in the way that, that's amazing, because you're right. They notice and they're paying attention. And just as you would hope that a family member would show up for you to celebrate you,
a very good way of putting it.
We are an extension of their family.
Yeah, we are.
We are their older brothers, father figures that are hopefully, so by us showing up, we might think it's like, well, I'm just walking around riding my bike.
For me, it's grandfather.
Okay. All right, I'm still in the older brother phase. I think.
Okay, that's good.
Not for long, though. Education's
but that's another thing. Even in class, and even outside, they come to the office, and just in casual conversation, they ask questions about our life. Now, sometimes in class, it's a way to get you to stop teaching.
That's true.
But you can pick it up when it's sincere, and they do. They really want to know why you chose this life, and why you dress like that, and why you live in that monastery, and because they've not been exposed to it before. And it's really interesting, because their minds are going. Their minds are going. It's not saying they're all going to join, but we are an interesting thing for them.
They are consumed by this generation of younger people, even my generation, are consumed constantly with very dystopian images. It's the end of the world. It's violence. It's war. It's, you got to have the 6-pack abs. You've got to have the D1 scholarship. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. And it's like, these are the standards that are constantly being fed their imaginations. And I think that's what makes our witness so interesting. But I think even more so, like, just so attractive to them, as they're like, wait, this is a different way of imagining what the world could be like. It could be a sense of, I could actually see people as my brother and sister, and I could actually see a world that looks more like the reign of God. And what does that look like, and how it can lift up people and do it through service and do it through worship and do it through brotherhood and all these sorts of things. And so it's almost like a real antidote to the imagination to say, wait, maybe there is another possibility for imagining how to move and live in the world, especially given what they're constantly consuming.
And the whole concept of commitment is absent. Mm-hmm. So when they see us and the commitment we've made, that really gets the thought process going to make a commitment to serve, as you say, the rest of your life, to live poverty, chastity, and obedience, to live in community. That is just so alien in their world, that type of commitment. And it challenges them. It challenges them. And they challenge us.
Yeah, that's for sure. For sure.
They have no filter in the questions they ask.
Yes, which can be really good, but it also can be
very bad.
Yes, depending on the question.
No filter.
Yeah.
I often say to them, I went to a Jesuit high school, and I said, if I asked the Jesuit that question, Father Blessing would get his paddle out.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, luckily no more of that.
I never expected to be in education. I'm starting my 6th year. One of the things I find is, and I found this when I worked in parish, you never knew what the day was going to be like, because it was the telephone rang, it could be anything in the parish. Well, in the school, when you're dealing with hundreds of teenage boys, you never know what the day is going to be like. I mean, we have a structure, we have periods and all, and I still haven't figured out how they rotate classes, but I just follow the crowd. But the students themselves, I find very much that they're looking to be in relationship with us. I really do. They're good guys. I don't think I could say that my day has any particular thing. You have your classes, but we have Mass, we have this, we have that. It keeps you moving and it keeps you guessing. But sometimes it's what happens between the classes, like the breaks or lunch and all. You'd be in your office and I have a couch, they love to come and take a nap. But that is where you do a lot of ministry, because they come to see you. So there is no particular day I have found in education in a high school, but it is so important to be there. I never realized how important it was for us to be in secondary education.
Yes, yeah, I think I agree completely. There is no typical day, especially for the friar in education, whether that is as just a variety of concerns come up, whether it's relationship issues, the number of times that I've helped a boy like craft a Snapchat message to a girl, it's like to make sure that he got a response. She's like, "What do you think about this?" So he's serving as kind of that family figure. Between that to, someone in my family is really sick, to I'm really stressed out, college decisions or whatever. I mean, you're right. There's a whole host of things that come our way, and I think they find in us this sort of availability because we're willing to be present.
Right.
And we don't always do it. I don't always do it well, but it's something that we always strive to do, to say, hey, we're here and accessible and approachable, and that's what we want you to see in us, so that you can feel like, that relationship's important too.
Something I find very challenging is when they get to know you and trust you, and you hear some of the family stories, what they go home to at night. Wow. Some of them, I say to them, I admire your strength. Now, of course, there's two sides to every story, but a lot of them really have a very difficult situation. It's very hard to hear that someone so young has to carry this. But, we also have to minister not just to the students, but to the staff.
Right.
We're there for everyone. Of course, that's a whole different methodology and a whole different ballgame, going from a 16-year-old to, a 40-year-old. But that's part of our ministry also.
Right. Whether that's people coming on staff for their own personal spiritual direction, or something going on in their families, or just needing someone to help them walk through, or even just learning more about the charism. I found that faculty are saying, well, there's something here. Could you help me? How could I make this a more Augustinian approach to this lesson?
Yeah.
Or how can I make this culture in this office feel more welcoming, hospitable? Yeah. So it's building relationship as
it
you
is
are about.
One of the ways we do that, and you could probably address this better, Avi and Savi. Why don't you give a little background to those two things?
Sure. So in the secondary education landscape, there's an association of secondary education of Augustinian schools, and there's about 10, I think now 11.
We have 11 affiliated schools.
11 affiliated schools in the U.S. and Canada. Some don't have friars explicitly at them, but they're sponsored by the provinces, and others do, like our schools have friars at them. And they host, this organization will host an AVI, Augustinian Values Institute for faculty and staff, and they rotate being hosted at these different 11 schools, where they spend a weekend. Each school sends about 6 faculty and staff for this kind of first year process, and then there's a second year version of that as well called Building City of God. And then they get a certificate from the workshop of the weekend. They reflect on the values. They meet other people, educators, staff from other schools.
And for many of them, it's the first exposure to Augustine or Augustinians.
Absolutely.
So that's the culture we're trying to instill in them at this meeting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you find people saying like, wow, I get it now, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's so much bigger than our campus. They might be like, all right, well, we say this here, but when they realize this is a global order, a global charism, it can be really powerful. And then there's a student version, the SAVI, the Student Augustinian Values Institute, where we'll send from our schools each year, again, to one of these schools that will host another 6 sophomores, typically, freshmen, sophomores. And then they'll go and they'll do a similar experience, but it's with their peers as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. I've been to 2 of them. One that Father Bill organized and did a wonderful job. He really did. I hope we don't have to ever do all the work he did. But I found Savi one of the best Augustinian experiences I've had in my 50-some years of being a friar, because I saw these young people, those who came from schools who have friars and have a stronger identity as Augustinians and no veritas unitas caritas, to schools who students came, there are no friars. But I watched them as they listened to the talks and as they got in small groups and talked to students from schools like ours who have friars. It was just such a change in their mindset. They just picked up so much stuff of what it means to be Augustinian. It really was one of the best experiences I have had as a friar, to see these young people leave there much more deeper understanding who we are and who they are as an Augustinian school, even without friars.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a tremendous program, and it's done a lot of really good, and it's something that I think we just hope to keep expanding. I mean, it's tough because you have the scale of only 6 students a year going.
I'd love to send tons. But
it would be, I know. I think a lot of students would be really great.
And I have students who didn't go, who when they hear about what happened, came to me and says, how come I wasn't picked? I said, that's because that's Dr. Zagarella's job.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
I would have picked you.
But it is interesting. I don't know if this is typical of all boys Augustinian schools, but I think it expands beyond that. But I do think in those moments, what we're encountering is, even between our schools, when those guys meet, maybe they've never met before.
Yes. Yeah.
But they feel like, no, we're in the same family.
Definitely.
And I think, we talk the same language. We do the same thing. They see us interact in our communities when we're there on these weekends with them. And it's almost like there have been so many moments when where we have held a mass. Like, for example, we held a mass for a girl in the sister school here to Malvern Prep, who was diagnosed with cancer. And so a few 9th graders who were her peers, who knew her from family connections, said, hey, we would like to do something for her. Can we pray for her? And then sign a card. 4 freshmen came up to me.
That's great.
But what they did was they came and they said, let's do an optional mass. I said, you want to do a mass? And they're like, yeah, during lunch period. I'm like, no one's going to come. Yeah. But sure enough, over 100, 200 boys came during their lunch period to come and celebrate Mass for this girl, many of whom did not know her. And so I remember there was this one moment I said to one of the boys, I said, hey, did you know her? Like, do you know her? And he goes, no, I've never heard of her before. I said, oh, well, what brought you here for the Mass? And he says, well, when I realized that she's the cousin of one of the guys who goes here, and she's a part of his family, then I knew that she was a part of my family.
Isn't that beautiful?
And I knew I had to be here for him and then for her. And I think that sense of family in a world that's very polarized and divided, which I think Savvy does so well,
beautifully,
is something that we can, I just hope to see continue to build. And it's something really powerful. I think the world needs it. I know I need it. So.
Well, that's rewarding for us when we see those results.
Mm-hmm.
You know, both Father Bill and I, our schools are all boys. But there are Augustinian schools which are co-ed. Mm-hmm. So that brings a different flavor when we go to these Savvy meetings. And actually, for my own students, some of them it blows their minds. You got girls' schools too? Yes, but yours is not.
Yeah. No, I did not go to an Augustinian high school.
I didn't either. I went to a Jesuit school. Yeah. I didn't want 12 PhDs. And I went in Manhattan.
Oh.
So we didn't have any fields, no sports, no nothing. No trees.
You turned out.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
Fill in the blank.
Somewhat okay. My high school self would say that I think he would be not surprised, to be honest. I think I was always sort of interested in education and liked that area. So I think he'd be like, all right, yeah. He would find me to be really awkward and like a very like goofy. I was much cooler in high school than I am now, but
mine would be shocked.
Ooh.
Because even as a religious, when I went to the school, to the St. Augustine's, people said to me, you always said you didn't want to go into education. Well, it's obedience. But in high school, I mean, I entered right after high school. And I expected to spend my religious life in parishes. So to be in a school is a complete change. And schools are so different today than they were then. I mean, we were still blackboard, and chalk, and we used to clap the erasers. We had no computers. We had no technology. We had no screens. We had nothing. It was straight lecture. Can't do that today in high school. You got to dance around and have PowerPoint slides and transitions and moving figures.
This is you're like the blackboard clap. That's like 1890.
Well, no, I think that was the earlier 1880s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
But of course,
my
students love when I say, "All right, now when I was in high school," they go, "Oh, again." Yes, you did not talk to the teacher like that.
That's true. That's true. They're very bold.
I would say I'm glad for the experience. I'm glad for the actually, my degree from Villanova is education, but that was back in the 70s, and there were still blackboards in those days. And I never expected to be in a school. We were just told to get a degree in education. So it would be surprised. It's a surprise.
Yeah, I would say to my high school self, I would say, all shall be well. I think there's a real temptation to think, like, your world is still very small as a high schooler, and I think everything has a lot of weight to it. You think, this decision is going to determine the rest of my life, or I need to make this, I need to figure this out, or I don't know what's my plan, or what God wants for me, or any of those things. And I think you think, okay, this grade is going to determine this. And I think that can create a lot of anxiety and depression and difficulty and just insecurity. And I think that's something I would say to my younger self, which is what I'm saying to the current guys that we're with, is all shall be well. Like, it's going to be okay because God is already won at the end of the day.
I think one of the things which makes an Augustinian school with Augustinians in it different is our community life. You know, you do have the questions that dads of stress, but we go home to a community. We don't just go home to an apartment. And one of the friars I live with has been teaching for over 51 years, and he can remember the kids in the row and what they got from 49 years ago. And I go home to someone. I'm not alone, and that makes a big difference. We can talk about things in school and all, but that support, which is part of being an Augustinian, whether it's school, parish, or whatever, you do feel the need and you feel the fulfillment with it.
So I am still in the school over the summer. So doing sort of the administrative team will be working, visioning, strategic planning for the year, getting feedback loops from the previous year, and also working with families who might be getting onboarded. There's parent partnership programs that will run for new families so that they feel like they have what they need coming to the fall. And there are also development events. So it is funny, when I was teaching previous to being a friar as Mr. Gabriel, I loved it. I had my 3 months in the summer. I could just, go do something else and travel, do all these sorts of things. But being in the leadership roles that we're in these schools has us there 12 months out of the year. So we're constantly trying to do ongoing education, but also improve the stuff that we're doing.
That's true. Being in administration, being a head of mission and ministry, we don't have the summer off. You have meetings and meetings, some by Zoom, but you're planning for next year for campus ministry. We spent 2 days ago. We spent a lot of time talking about the orientation program for each grade. So they think. I always say, the teaching really is not the main job. I love that part, but it's the administration of mission and ministry. So you're doing that. I'm also tutoring a couple of kids for sacraments during the summer. They come in after football practice. And we have, a talk. You don't get the summer off. You really don't. There is so much to get ready. And even as a teacher, I go through all my slides and stuff and redo things because what didn't work last year. I mean, it's not as difficult as during the year. I mean, you're done a lot early in the day, but you're not just sitting back. One of the things which I find when they do come back, I'll say to them, are you glad to be back now? And a number of them will say, yeah, I've been bored. I'm glad to be back here. They like the structure. They like being with their friends, which they didn't have. So some of them, could take 13 months off. But what advice would I give them? Just be ready and be open. We're starting again. Last year went well. It will too.
So I guess there's 2 things I would say. One is stay close to your faith, which can serve as an anchor when everything else seems to be falling apart. It's like when I was ordained a priest, Bishop Dan Turley, an Augustinian, he embraced me. There's a little embrace, and then the other priests will come around and embrace you. And he whispered in my ear, stay close to Jesus. Stay close to Jesus. Which has been sort of my mantra. But, for some, our students aren't all, Catholic or Christian. So, but to say, stay close to your faith would be something that I would hope that they would lean into. And the other one would be own it. Like, own the choices and the work that you're going to put into this coming year. Own it, the good and the bad, and then learn from the bad. Don't try to sweep it under or whatever, but say, hey, no, I'm going to learn this. But then own it in a way that also owns the mission. That says, if I really say that I'm a brother, that means I am going to go sit down at that table when someone else may be sitting alone. Or I am going to, in class, pray for someone that I know really needs some prayers. Or I am going to reach out to this guy who is really struggling. And I'm going to celebrate this guy who's really done well. And I'm not going to lead with jealousy or insecurity or comparison, right? Own it. So stay close to your faith and own it.